I would like to call this meeting to order with a reminder that the actions taken this evening will focus on our students and their achievement. With that, I would like to have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
It's been
Second.
moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion about the consent agenda or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. The comment?
We had one person contact us, but he was not able to be here this evening, so he has requested to come to a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to Doug, financial report.
Okay, we'll get that pulled up here. Okay, on the screen and in your board packet is the financial report for the month of June 2005, and we'll kind of walk through those as we go through it. And in the general fund, you'll see total revenue for the month of $808,119. The big change that you'll see in that is River Hills Consortium. In the past, we had flowed that through the general fund in Fund 13 due to guidance from the Department of Education. They have requested that we reclassify that, and we now will flow that through Fund 94, which is an agency account. So that probably will be the big change with that. And that over the course of this upcoming school year, you'll notice in our monthly cash flow balances some changes in that because we're not flowing those dollars through the general fund anymore. And on the expenditure side, you can see we had $5,043,054 in expenditures for the month. Again, the big change with that is with the River Hills Consortium. Expenditures for that will be flowing through Fund 94 as well. Ending balance for $10,380,493, and you can see where that compares to last year. And then in the next page is the cash flow. Again, we've only have 1 month in the new fiscal year, so it's sort of hard to do any sort of trend. Fund 33, our state consent of $13,300, and then another $252,673, which is transferred to the sinking fund in the debt service account for our revenue fund debt. That leaves us a balance of $7,841,616. And I would please note and remind the last two items, the $1.834 million and the $999,000 that are accounts. Those are designated reserve funds that the district cannot touch until those particular debt service obligations are paid for. In physical plant and equipment levy, one minor change in that. In your original document, the beginning balance for the year was incorrect. Typographical error by yours truly when I completed the report. But the revenue for the month was $17,000,000 with expenditures of $1,236,771. The big pieces of the expenditures were the remodeling projects that were place over the summer, both North Cedar, Southdale, the roof work, and all the other things that are going on during the summer months. $2,177,812, and you can see where that compares to a year ago. Debt service now is its own separate account. We had sort of combined it with three separately. And you can see there's the transfer in of the $252,673 out of the statewide 1 cent sales tax, and of course that will be the amount that will be transferred monthly through May of next year for our debt service obligations for this upcoming new school year. Student activity revenue of $38,479, expenditures of $25,587. So you can see a fund balance of $592,704. And in food service, there's another change this year. We now have 2 different enterprise accounts. Food service account, which you've normally seen, and you can see the revenue of $1366 and expenditures of $26,911 for a fund balance of $475,974. And now, again, with some guidance from the Iowa Department of Education, the high school had started its own coffee shop program I believe last year was its end of its first full year of operations, and they have advised us that we should fund that through its own separate account and an account, and that's what Fund 68 now is. In the past, we had flowed that through the Student Activity Fund, and due to advice from DE now that they're asking us to run it as a separate enterprise account. So we'll show that separately every month as we go forward. And if there's any questions, I'd certainly be willing to answer anything I could.
Thank you, Doug. Does anybody have any questions about the Secretary's financial report?
Fund 68 and 61 are different.
They're different. It's sort of like they're different. Let's just put it that way. But I have to report them combined to the state of Iowa. For our sake, let's just say they're different.
Any other questions?
Do you also have to do the books for the coffee shop, or do they have?
That'll flow through our office. They'll take care of that. Yeah.
Okay.
All the revenue and expenditures will flow through our office as well. The kids do their the bills of the board approving those claims, and we're receiving all the revenue, and like we would activity fund or anything else.
Gotcha.
So just to recap, what was the fund that has $7 million in it? That's not PEPL, is it? Something where there's.
That one?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
So out of that balance of 7,
Take
41.
Take 2.8 million right off the top.
right, then that's the 1,834 and the 999 that we have to set aside.
Correct.
In that account code or contract.
That is per our debt service obligation. We've
Right.
set that aside. Yes.
Okay.
And that just sits there until those are paid off, then that becomes free, but those aren't paid off for several years now.
Right.
Right now.
And dollars typically does that go in case the smokestack falls down at the high school? And
Well,
in case
in the past, we had been using those dollars for renovations of other projects, and right now, all the projects we have out that in the near foreseeable future come out of the physical plant and equipment levy.
Okay.
There should be, with a couple of minor exceptions, very little additional that school year.
Okay.
And we
Thanks.
had 3.1 set aside to offset the cost of the last bond, the bond one, and we had 3.1 taken from this account, or at least designated from this account, to buy that down to 35 million.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Good questions. Any other discussion? Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
The
Thank you.
Secretary's report will be placed on file for audit. Moving on to item E on the agenda, communications. Communications from the board, or?
Yeah, high school registration was very through with ease, and I think Jason's just doing a great job up there. So I wanted to just let everybody know it was a very pleasurable process.
Good.
Thank you, Jenny.
They have worked hard to streamline registration and done a remarkable job. The hope is that we are going to now move more towards online registration in the future. We tried to work towards that this year. However, we had a few snags with timing and just the scope of that project, but the hope is to be able to offer that certainly next spring when we go through some of the registration, especially with pre-K and kindergartners, but also then next fall certainly with all students.
I was in today, and the gal in here at the registration said there are 10 new families in to register today.
We've had a lot, yes. So we've had a lot. We don't know final numbers yet, and where we're at enrollment-wise. We're still trying to verify a lot of different families. We're going to be up, so we're going to be up, which is what we anticipated. And obviously, with secondary registering now, with the process, we'll wait to determine where those numbers are. But we are looking to.
We picked up our new Chromebook for my 10th grader, and my 7th grader I think will get a new one too. Have we gotten any feedback as to how the summer program went with people who kept their Chromebooks over the summer?
Not yet, but we will collect that when we go. We'll be able to track it, whether it had any that were down.
Yeah, it's
those
interesting
kinds
to
of things.
see.
But didn't sound like we've had very many students to it, and we had very few that I'm aware of that came in. So
Good.
With that, we didn't have a great number of Chromebooks that were kept, so it'll be interesting to see just what the feedback is.
Okay. John?
This is a repeat agenda item, as everybody remembers. So we have John Larson again here this evening, and really we wanted to bring this back for clarity purposes, just to make sure that for 10 years, 20 years down the road, we are crystal clear with the you just open up their application and that document within your file, if that's okay. And really to remind the board that there are 3 items that we're asking for with this. Number 1 is to really define equations was gifted to the district. Really the language was just for equipment, and obviously equipment before would have been overheads and things like that. Now equipment sometimes is software. It's other items. So John has worked really well to be able to try to work to define what equipment is, and this goes back to a lot of those aspects that requests like this have been granted in the past. So on line 11, if you look at line 11, it talks about that our hope is to move to be able to have equipment be tangible or intangible assets that support student learning. The whole focus of this request was to focus on benefits to the district and benefit students. So the hope is to be able to talk about those expenditures with equipment to be tangible or intangible assets, and we hope that that is something that the court will grant. The second item is to have this be shifted to the foundation. This is line 28 and 30 within the document, page number 5. And in essence, what it says on line 28 is that the foundation was incorporated in 2015. Mrs. Christensen passed away well before that, and in fact, her will was crafted roughly 7 years before that time. All grants like this, all gifts like this now go through the foundation. The foundation is solely focused on supporting the district, supporting our mission. And again, all grants go through the foundation, or all gifts such as this go through the foundation now, and that is certainly the purpose and one of the reasons why we have that foundation. Then the third item that we have really focused on, this is where some of the questions came about last time, was the expenditures. A lot of red starting really on page number 5 with the timing of allowable withdrawals, but going all the way to the end of the document to really clarify the hope that we're asking the board. Obviously, we are being good stewards and want to continue to be good stewards and change at all the gift amount. But what this allows is for us to follow the intent of the gift and the language of the gift, but be able to ensure that we are being the good stewards of the dollars as much as we possibly can. Dollars out of this bequest based on Iowa code, and it talks about the Iowa code requirements throughout this. When you start looking at line 42, 43, 44, in order to ensure that those funds are being spent the right way based on the request, and then certainly with the greatest amount of efficiency as we possibly can. That arose last time, and John, I'm not, if I overstep anything here, please jump in. But
doing great.
Sometimes I get lucky. So the questions last time was, do we spend any of the dollars allocated from the bequest and the gift? And what we've set aside here is the fact that if it is something that makes sense to spend dollars, so say if all of a sudden there's an expenditure of, and I'm going to just use the example of equipment for student learning that has been requested, that does not make sense to spend dollars over a 3-year period to either pay interest on that, or the fact that go up in cost, to be able to use the dollars from the bequest and then not gift any more dollars out of that until the interest catches up to the principal. So it just allows flexibility. Iowa code allows that, and it makes sure that you're being good stewards, providing the impact necessary for students out of gifts, but to ensuring that there's flexibility so you can make the most efficient use for student learning. So with that, That's kind of a crux of the draft. If this, with those pieces of clarity in mind, this goes to the court system, and a judge will actually rule on all these points. They can either say, we like this point, we don't like these points. Typically, we would go through the estate, but Mrs. Christensen does not have any heirs, so this is a little bit unique in a lot of different ways. And again, we're sure that we have greater efficiency with these dollars. Last time, since we are very limited as a district on how we can invest these dollars, 1% interest rate on this, so of $1.4 million, we usually gift out about $10,000 a year. We know that the foundation, and again, not in a extravagant or risky endeavor, can be much more fluid with their investment and have a greater rate of return on their. So typically we would see anywhere from 4 to 5 to 6%, even higher, with a moderate investment protocol. So, and that then again goes back to benefit students directly. So, John.
Very good. There was a third point, I think, that we had some discussion on last time. And what we're coming with tonight is a little bit different from what I explained last time. Last time I was talking about a set rate of return every year, and we talked about 4%. But we believe that Iowa Code 540A, which is what Andy has been describing, applies. It's institutional, and it's very consistent with a uniform act that's been prepared, that's been adopted in many states. It gives recognition to the fact that a gift instrument that talks about expending income only on an annual basis is really not the best way to live any longer. It's important that we understand that that's an endowment fund, and it has to exist in perpetuity, and its purpose is to preserve the principal for the purposes that the donor, in this case Ms. Christensen, had in mind. But it does allow, it allows, as you see in, it allows us to expend or accumulate from time to time as we determine is prudent. Again, always consistent with her purposes. Statute gives a list of things that have to guide those decisions, but again, must always be treated as an endowment fund. The example you gave is a good one. More flexibility than we've had in the past. Now what happens is we file this petition with the court. I don't think I was totally clear about this last time either. We provide notice to the Attorney General. The Attorney General has oversight over institutional funds, and they can review the petition and offer whatever input they might have. So this really is reviewed by two bodies. It's reviewed by the Attorney General, and then it goes before a judge. All three measures, really.
What questions do you have?
Can you give me an example of something that would not be allowed to be purchased under the tangible or intangible assets that support student learning?
I think I can. I think that the intent of the foundation board is to defer to administration and perhaps you folks on what are permissible purposes. Would you say that's
Yes,
true, Susan?
yes. The selection will not change.
Yeah.
The way the money change. The foundation will just manage the funds and report on the funds.
And I can give you an example. We're not desks out of this. That's not a student desks.
Okay.
That is not a student learning piece of equipment or tangible or intangible aspects. But technology components, 3D printers, 3D software, those are the tangible and intangible, but they might not fit equipment underneath the definition that was proposed, 15, 20 years ago.
But you're saying something like a desk would not fit the definition tangible or intangible assets that support student learning?
No, I would, and what we have done, and I think we talked a little bit about this last time, we go through an application process, and really the application is focused on student learning at the forefront and trying to be innovative in unique ways that support learning across the district or across classrooms. And so it's something that we anything that's going to be just something that normally would be provided in classrooms. So, we're not going to provide pens or pencils for students out of this gift. It's going to be something that's very unique and offering multiple new opportunities for students.
Do you have any examples of 3 awards, what it's gone to?
Oh gosh, now you're tapping into my memory.
That's okay.
They did do a 3D printer with it, didn't they?
We did a few years ago. Last year.
This year
Tried
was
to-
the instruments.
Thank you.
For
That's
the
right.
Yeah.
K-6 music.
We provided the instruments that are going to be new instruments for all students to be able to have that experience. 2 years ago, we provided some, I believe, Project Lead the Way equipment with some very specific technology, and I want to ask now students to have some experiences at the junior high level that they normally would not.
So it can dig deep into a specific area within the district based on the applications received and the approval given by
The
By
group
that body.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions or concerns? Don't have a prepared motion, we just need a motion to approve this. And then,
I beg your pardon,
Yes.
President Coyle. So the example Andy gave was potentially a 3-year expenditure. We'd pull money out for a particular grant. And that's just an example. There's no set in the contracts that you can only go out 3 years or only out 5 years.
Just an example.
Just an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So I guess, again, thinking 20 years down the road, none of us are here probably. And if there happens to be, something drummed up that's so unique that it must be purchased and therefore we take the funds for 10 years, are we just at the mercy of their wisdom in 20 years right now, or is there
Mercy of the wisdom of the foundation.
of whoever's in charge 20 years from now to say, well, yeah, we really want this equipment, so we're going to really sort of borrow against this thing for 10 years before the principal picks up. Maybe I'm not making sense, but
I understand what you're saying.
No,
And
I believe you could do that.
you could do
You
that.
have to in the code, and I could read those factors too if you're interested, but
Okay.
the prudence goes through there, honoring the intent of the donor goes through there, always recognizing that it's a perpetual fund, an endowment fund, and you can't purpose too much. Could you go out 10 years on a project? Well, you'd have to go through the checklist.
Okay.
And I would think the foundation each year would need to report back to the Board of Education.
You feel confident then that would be a reliable checklist to go through
really
the
do.
future of unknowns?
I really do.
Okay.
It's a good question, but I think you can rely on that.
And it's been, we've had this since, it started in 1997, 98?
The bequest,
Right.
2002.
And, 2002, okay.
2002, I
So
believe.
all these years so far, Jim, this is in the process, the same process will be taking place, pretty much, except for the definition of equipment, correct?
Expanding that now,
Right,
yes.
And I think this is the third gift that we have, or would be, that we've transferred to the foundation as a school district, because they have the capacity and they have the ability to be able to manage these, and that's really their as a foundational board and a foundation be able to handle these kind of requests and bequests on behalf of the district.
any other questions? Hearing none, do I have resolution.
I move we approve the resolution as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, John, for
Thank
coming.
you.
We
Thanks, John.
appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Glad to be here.
Thanks, John.
In your board packet were the legislative priorities for you to review. We had them, I think, in front of us at our last board meeting also, but we're going to come back and make the decision on what we want to put forward.
We had the 5 of them last year. I see down to 4.
Yeah.
That should be easy.
They've limited us to 4. And I've tried to highlight, or okay, last year, 4 of the 5 are underneath student achievement and student equity. And then underneath finance, we had basically A. They worded it a little bit differently this year, but it is A to set the supplemental state aid in the amount of time that's allowed by Iowa code.
Well, I think that's a gimme.
A?
A, under finances.
It's on my list.
Yeah, we might be beating our head against a wall, but I think it's worth the
It's in code now.
effort.
It's in code now, and
Yeah.
for next year, obviously, it's 5 months.
Did I hear, see head nods on that one? Maybe? Okay.
I don't know how you put any teeth into that.
I know.
It's my only question, having 4, are we better to, I mean, do we think putting our support behind something that we're not sure, I mean, if we're just beating our head against the wall, is it better to do that, or is it better to put it behind some that we feel could actually gain traction and get movement on? I don't know.
I mean, I
That's
don't
what I was
disagree
thinking.
with. Why don't we see what everybody's feels, and then we can narrow down the field. Any others?
I'm strongly for L, and I don't see why it would even be controversial among the state.
For L under
Yeah, student
student
achievement.
achievement?
L
Oh, yeah.
supports returning to 3-year school board member terms with less than a majority. Just the fact that you have a quorum up for re-election just seems like bad.
Any others?
We ought to probably put a caveat behind that. We also would like the state representatives to go to 4 years too, if that would help.
I think we need to try A again under student achievement. I think
The penny sales
with the
tax.
penny, yeah. Check the penny. Is that something we're going to have to do every year?
They think there's going to be traction on this, that again this year is the hope. And what was discussed was to extend it out to 2049, and that's actually, I believe, in the Senate. And I think there is some support there in both
We need to
parties.
make that a priority, or do you think it's going to happen anyway?
Yeah, I wouldn't guarantee you by any means.
I think that's pretty important.
Agreed.
One of mine that wasn't on there was J. IASB supports Iowa law giving local school boards sole authority to establish charter and online skills. I'd like to get more attention to this issue, and I think this is a way to do it.
What was that? Doug, sorry.
J.
J under student achievement, Jim.
Yeah. Or every time I yeah, under student achievement, J, page 1.
Number 8, under student achievement, the inclusion of dropout prevention and funding for Irish students in the foundation. I mean, I know we'd had some issues with this because they redefined it and we're limiting that. Has that flexibility? How are you feeling about that one?
Could always be more flexible with the, right now it's, they did make a couple of changes to the law. I'm not sure it would help us out as much because we don't use the dollars in the way that they now provide districts the flexibility to use the dollars in that way. So to say we might not in the future, but right now our dollars are pretty well locked in, and we still would be pushing for much more flexibility on how those dollars are spent. More on the prevention side, which
So I'm willing to look to you a little bit on your judgment to see if you feel that would rise to the level or if we have bigger fish to fry.
probably going to be bigger fish to fry than that one when you look at everything else that's, you look at supported last year and not much of those, nothing happened on those. I think you have to continue to push year in and year out for some of those biggies.
I think that K,
Yeah, that covers a lot of
it is,
things.
it's sort of a, a statement of beliefs more than it is defining a resolution. You said J?
Yep.
Okay.
K covers an awful lot, though.
It does cover a lot. Did they address
Couldn't
anywhere else?
even
I
get a
read
J.
through,
Good.
but I can't remember if they addressed kind of the last two bullet points in K, not repurposing existing education funds and making sure mandates are fully funded. Did we address that anywhere else? Or is that the only place that's addressed this time around?
Not, well, at the very end, unfunded mandates. So I don't know if any of those cover it.
Right.
C would be the last bullet
Yeah.
underneath unfunded mandates, but not really repurposing the existing education funds. I did not see that anywhere else.
And do you think they will discuss the start date, school start date again, or is that?
I believe it's been put to rest. I'm not sure that'll come back up.
Okay.
Especially during the election year.
Yes. Now, in the few years down the road, potentially, but I think right now it's
Okay.
been
Okay.
put to rest.
Does IASB give us any sort of report card on the top priorities that are given at the convention, how successful they are with those priorities? Since they're sort of our body for representing us, I've never heard anything.
It's a good question, and I usually get something from the UEN now or through SAI, and I've not really seen any kind of document from ISAB that I.
So right now, I've heard under student achievement, A and L. And then I've also heard under finance, A. And then Doug brought up J and under A. Am I missing any?
I think that's accurate, Trace.
Okay, so that would be one more than we are allowed to have.
We usually do that, don't
Bad?
we? Don't we?
It's all done online this year, so I'm assuming
Oh,
once we
yeah.
click 4 of them, it's going to cut us off. So
They're on to us.
It's mandated.
Can you write them all as one sentence?
Which one's number
Possibly.
5 and see if I can make it work.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Doug just said if you were gonna rank out of the 5 here, maybe the least one, if we couldn't fit it on
Yeah.
there, what would that be for us?
I'm going to argue K, and the reason is because we're not the only ones speaking. And I have a hunch some school board out there is going to pick K.
Okay? All right. So then it would be under student achievement, A, J, and L, and under finance,
And then K if we can sneak it in.
and K would be the end. Understood. Am I going too fast here for everybody? Okay. Okay.
I feel it's important to tell them they shouldn't be imposing mandates that aren't fully funding, but I think that's one of those banging your head against the wall if it doesn't do any good.
Mhm.
I mean, I kind of feel somewhat similarly about them setting the budget when they're supposed to. But I do feel that one we should put our support behind. But I mean, I think K is very important, but maybe it is one of those that, to me, it's very logical. I don't know why
Yes.
we have to tell them that.
Under, you said under finance, which one?
Finance was A,
A, okay.
and we had A last time also.
Under that, it says 6%. Is that a locked-in typo, or do you?
We can change that however we want to.
It's a great question, though, Jim.
I guess, I don't think it's logical, but
No, it's not logical.
But in that they kind of debated that, what that should be on the floor. So they went in at 6 because it was priorities from lots of districts. And then didn't we come down to 4?
at the convention.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I thought they stayed at 6.
Did we stay at 6?
I thought they did.
But I remember them debating it for a long time.
Because the bottom line is, what are they basing that? What are we basing it on every year? Frankly, say we want to fight for 6%. It's dubious at best. But I don't know if we can do much good by changing that 6 to a formula, or that 6 to something more broad.
Or to 24%.
24%. All right.
So we can change that then, you mean?
Yeah, we can
Okay,
add that.
when you go to put it in there.
As
Okay.
an example, you could say at a rate that supports a continuous school improvement or something, however you want to word it, that we can edit that.
Yeah.
I
guess
think
if
that
I
makes
was picking
more
a
sense.
At a
number,
rate
I'd
that
say
supports.
4% would be more realistic.
Number in there, it's not going to be representative of every
No.
school board
Right,
member
no.
that's out there, so that
As I
is really
mentioned,
reaching.
Actual cost increases by the district, so about the actual revenue received by Des Moines.
Right.
It'd be like,
Could we say somebody said it, maybe it was Jim, or maybe it wasn't even Jenny, at the rate to encourage continuous school improvement?
Doug
love
said
that.
Yeah,
Doug said,
I think that's a
okay.
great idea.
Sorry, Doug.
Better.
Okay. At a rate to encourage continuous school improvement.
Just
we'll
take the
have
word 6%.
Dr. Kenyon debate.
Right,
If that's one of the priorities.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we need approval of those. So it's under, again, under student achievement, it's A, L, and J. And finance, it's A with the change. And K is going to be if we can fit it in under student achievement. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the priorities?
So moved.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I move that we approve the priorities as we discussed.
Thank you, Doug. Do I have a second? Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to item H on the agenda, the facilities discussion.
I didn't have any kind of a formal presentation or anything like that. It was just a discussion time for the facilities. What questions do you have? What information would you like to seek or have come before you as a school board? What are things that you're hearing? What are items that you are focused on, passionate about when it comes to the facility discussion? We know that there are several different items. We know that, number one, the earliest anything can be brought back to the community would be February 2nd, and that's based on statute Iowa code. The next date would be April 6th, I believe, would be the next possible date per Iowa code. Those are set into statute. We know we're continuing to grow, which is exciting. It's a challenge, but certainly a challenge where we're one of, about 30% of the districts across the state that are actually increasing in enrollment, and a lot of those are suburban districts and urban areas that seem to see the growth in student enrollments. So, without further ado, it's really just an opportunity to discuss thoughts, ideas, things that you want, questions that you have.
What's the potential for more portables? Where and what timing you look to see that happen?
Well, that is a good question. We have locations for where we could put in place portables at every one of our elementaries now. We know that we have different locations that are place portables than other buildings. You know, one of the challenges that we're faced with, several of our elementaries are on very tight spaces, so it's going to be very difficult to place portables on those, and some of those buildings are some of our growing areas. So we're going to have to come up with some potential options. Do we shift where we can place portables on school locations that might be more accessible and shift students that direction, or do we look at trying to place portables in buildings that are growing so we can keep neighborhoods intact? We do know that probably the timeline, maybe even as early as next year now, we'll need to start placing portables. And some of the first schools we'll have to look at will be Lincoln and Southdale.
So if we would have to shift students where we can put portable, we draw boundary lines to do that?
Or you shift neighborhoods.
So that is that would be a boundary line decision then?
Be could just be a board decision at that point too, to say, you know, instead of taking out a playground at this school to place portables, or saying we're going to place portables in very difficult to access locations at this school, this neighborhood will be shifted here because we can place portables in the building much more efficiently than we've done that in the past, or either because to place them there.
Can we use the property that we have out south and west with portables, or that doesn't even work, does it, because we don't have a building there?
No,
you have to have a
couldn't.
building. You have to have a building where they're
The infrastructure with portables.
right.
Thank you. So the challenge with the portables is trying to install that infrastructure, making sure that we have the water, we have the
Right.
sewer hookups,
Right.
and that would be very cost inefficient. Part of that $19 million cost of that new elementary really was the site work, and that site prep work out there was like $3.1 million. So that's installing all those utilities.
Roughly, what does it cost to put a portable up?
$50,000 to $70,000 for foundation and infrastructure work. Make a decision whether to lease or purchase a portable, because we don't have any spare units to move around. We're probably looking at somewhere in that $40,000 to $50,000 per unit per year if we lease them.
And buying them was $250,000? How much was
I wouldn't be able to give you an exact number on that, but probably 3 times that number.
Okay.
That's a rough
150.
estimate. We do have feelers out now with firms that we've worked with in the past on seeing what units may be available coming off lease at the end of this new school year. I don't have any answers back on that yet, but we're already sort of planning for the eventuality.
Are we adding any new for this fall? And if, regardless, can you just refresh our memory as to where we have them and how many we have at each site?
We currently have 6 classrooms or 5 buildings around Orchard Hill Elementary, and we have 1 portable at the high school.
We elected not to put a portable at Lincoln this year. We took that last flex space, the last creativity space out of Lincoln on the second floor to transition that into a classroom, and now we are completely out of space and as full as can be at Lincoln.
And the reading space down by the Title I room now is turned into a small collaborative teaching space as well.
We've got the preschool at how many schools?
4.
4.
Yep.
4.
Yep.
And that's mandated, no? Up to 150?
No, it's not something that we applied for, we received as a district. Kindergarten readiness obviously is a huge factor in making sure that students can transition well and certainly meet those success rates as they move through the system. It's not mandated, but I don't know what the percentage of schools across the state that have that now, but it's extremely high because it's best practice for kids. We do receive funding for the preschool, but it's weighted. We receive 0.5 of the dollar amount for the preschool program for those students, and you have to meet the certain requirements with the rigorous curriculum and expectation.
That's all
associated with
state?
that.
That's
It
all
is.
state funding?
State funding, formula driven. It's 50% of the allotment per student that we receive from the state.
Would it be fair to say, though, that if many of the school districts are allowing the pre-K, that many of those districts would have declining enrollment, and it would almost be a boost to filling their classrooms or additional funding? Would those step that way?
That'd be an interesting question. Would we lose enrollment if we didn't offer pre-K, and would parents choose another location? What we found, and coming from a more rural district, once we offered pre-K, typically those students that enter your pre-K stay in your system, even if there's not open enrollment associated with pre-K. It's basically you can choose where you go. Once you are in a pre-K system, typically what happens is that's where you go to school at. You're linked to that community, that school district is what we found. So the question would be, if we, I would ask the opposite question. If we didn't offer pre-K, what would happen, and would we lose enrollment to maybe pre-Ks in local communities or surrounding communities? And that would be an interesting dynamic.
It would be.
We turn away, and I don't know how many we did this year, but anywhere from 30 to 50 families and students every single year that want to come to our pre-K programs. I think this year the line started out front 11 o'clock or midnight, 1 o'clock, I don't remember. So, yeah.
It really is like the Black Friday.
How much?
And I do think we really do offer a quality preschool program. Kids have that early start like that. A lot of kids come from families, there are some that don't have a lot of structure early on, and they may not have the vocabulary or the skills that are needed, and we just really find that the kids who have had the preschool experience have a jump start on other kids. And we do, and I do want to say we do have a lot of quality community preschools too. Between all of us, there's still kids on waiting lists.
Pam, which schools do we have the pre-K at? I know
They're
some
at
of them
Hanson and Mercy. We have additional.
in that extra building. Is there just one pre-K over there? In that
Right
extra
now,
building?
this year we have 3-year-olds and a Head Start 3-year-old program.
How much money does the state give us per preschool student?
It's half of the state allocation. Our state allocation this year is $64.70. 63.70.
64.
64.70. So it would be half of that, so 32.35.
That, I have to still call it a lot, but it's now safe. If that was pushed out to 2049, there's not enough money there. There would be buildings.
There would be, and we haven't ran all those numbers. Again, you can borrow out 20 years, so it'll allow 5-year increment, and it'd be a 6-year increment going into next year that we could borrow out against. Because again, we borrowed out through 2029 with quite a bit of our funds to do the work at Hanson and Southdale and Holmes and Pete that was needed at the time those were done. So 2049 gives us more time, but that will be done incrementally over time because, again, you can only borrow out for 20 years. So the most we could borrow out if this went into effect July 1st, 2016, would be 2036. And then 2017, 37, and then down the line.
And each time you do that, it's, in essence, you're tying the school board's hands out for another 20 years.
Another 20 years.
You mentioned we won't be here in 20, but you're essentially making decisions for the future.
Correct.
And for the preschool, go back to that, how many classrooms does the preschool at Hanson, and I'm sorry, you said it twice.
Hanson has one, North Cedar one, Cedar Heights has one, at Southdale, 4. One's a 3-year-old program.
But that's
The one-
off-site.
And the one thing too, that we've done is we've taken, we're paying a lot of money out to other agencies to serve our special ed population. At that, with taking it back in-house, that's really made a financial benefit for
Yeah,
us.
It's been an economic advantage to the district to have that 3-year-old, 4-year-old special needs program back in the district instead of those students being tuitioned out.
Mm-hmm.
And we do need to have regular preschool students that we can integrate the special ed students with.
The ones at Southdale, they're in the church, right?
This year, we've moved it so the 3-year-old program and the special ed 3-year-olds.
Okay.
And now the 4-year-olds are in the building.
The building,
We call it
okay.
the Southdale Building and the Southdale Center.
Okay, okay.
Other questions that you may have or have been thinking about? You know, I guess one subject I'll broach a little bit would be maybe open enrollment.
Yep.
I know there's been a lot of discussion about open enrollment, and just talk to us about that. Talk to what it looks like for us right now.
Yeah, open enrollment, obviously that's come under fairly close scrutiny the last several months. We have, and I think board members know this, we have a net of about 250 open enrolled students into the district. We have about 350 out, roughly about, 350 coming in, about 100 going out for open enrolled students. This is all written in Iowa code with very clear expectations with open enrollment. One of the things that I think is a lack of clarity for people, open enrolled students, once approved by the district, stay in our district. We cannot remove open enrolled students for attendance, for discipline. They are treated as
students.
There are students. They're treated as resident students. The DE is, and they have said very clearly, you cannot eliminate enrollment students. If they live in our district for a period of time, establish residency here, go to school here, move out of the district, they open enroll into the district in a timely fashion, you have to allow that. You cannot, even if the board says we're going to close open enrollment, you cannot continue some enrollment students or open enrolled students in. I asked Carrie to do some numbers for me, just last year's numbers. And again, we have fairly high mobility in our district. Last year, we had 9 new open enrolled students into our district, or excuse me, 6 new open enrolled students into our district, which means they moved from, for example, Chicago to Iowa and open enrolled into Cedar Falls. Could have moved in from anywhere, but they moved in to a surrounding community, open enrolled into Cedar Falls. So there are 6 new open enrolled students in last school year. We had 67 continuous open enrolled students last year. And again, we have fairly high mobility. We have about 20% students that have mobility, and we always give that reporting annually. And then we had 3 siblings. And that means that, say, a student is open enrolled into our district, the sibling was 3 years old. 2 years later, they open enroll into our district. The DE has said that you can actually, which was new guidance for us, that you can actually deny siblings even if the older sibling is continuous. So last year, 6 new open enrolled students, which we could, as a board, say we're not going to allow. 67 continuous districts, which as a board we cannot. And then we had 3 siblings. That is 88 students were continuous, which the board cannot deny, cannot eliminate, cannot or fine, because I think the quality of education, people move in, some of them are UNI students that establish residency, they might have children, they start school here, then they move out of our district, they want to continue here because of the quality of education. Those are those continuous families. And again, our mobility, pretty high. And again, mobility typically, annually. 88% of our open enrolled families. And when you look at the total open enrolled families, it runs about 85%, and we're still trying to finalize and collect all those numbers, are continuous open enrolled students. Even if you closed open enrollment as a board, those 308, about 85% of those 350 students, you will not be able to open enrolling into our district.
Do they define what defines continuous? I mean, how long continuous? Or?
Derek Heights at the DE, and again, he is the expert on open enrollment. We've asked to continue to collect and show proof of residency. You enroll into our district. There's not a set amount of time that establishes whether or not you are here long enough. It's not a month. It's not 6 months. It's establishing that residency and enrolling in our school. And then their interpretation is in a timely manner applying for open enrollment upon course, but obviously most families, once they move away, if they, and again, we're very strict on this, if they enroll in another district, if they attend another district, they cannot open enroll back. That is, you've attended, you've registered, you are now a resident student of that district. So what we've come to interpret is, if you are here today, you're gone tomorrow, and within that 24 to 36 hour period, you apply for the open enrollment, for continuous open enrollment, have not established any kind of attendance within another district, that's a timely definition.
What questions do you have about that?
So one thing is we're getting, and just to clarify for everyone, so as we're getting the open enrollment list when it gears, so when we see that list, a lot of those students are just...
What happens is once you apply for open enrollment, you don't have to reapply for open enrollment. So the continuous open enrolled students are those students that have attended our district as resident students, then have moved to another district surrounding, and it doesn't even have to be contiguous actually, and then you, in a timely manner, to come back to our district because you want to continue on with your classmates where you've established the relationship and really continue on in a district that provides very high quality education. That's a continuous.
Okay.
They do not, no. And if you look at this monthly report,
So I'm looking at
It's the ones with the C behind
all
it.
the C's are continuous.
Okay.
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 The C.
There you go.
Yeah.
So they
So-
do show on this report.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now, and those are the ones that, they're first-time appliers, so they're applying to our district for the very first time, but they have a C next to them because they are continuous. They have been here, they've established residency, could be for a year, could be for 8 years, but they have then moved to another district. Public information, you can look at the O'Connells. They were here. They have moved away. They're applying to be continuous open enrolled students. Obviously, the kindergartner was not here last year, so he'd be considered a sibling.
So we have 75%, just as an example for this time, 75% we couldn't say no, and then 1 out of 8 we could have said no if we were completely heartless.
Correct. Correct.
By busing.
For open enrolled students.
And the funding comes with them.
And the
Funding comes with them.
Correct.
And at one time, their portion of the tax from the district that's they're living in, real estate tax, does that come to?
No, we do
Just the state portion.
just the state portion, and then
Well,
it's a state portion and the local portion. It's whatever they generate based on their funding formula that they're.
It's the previous year's average state cost per pupil.
Oh.
So this year would be the 6,400 roughly.
So, yeah, this year's open enrollment will be 6350, 60 in that area.
Other questions about, at least leave here today.
They do not get a request what building they go to, just to clarify.
No, We assign them to different buildings based on class sizes, thresholds that we have in the class sizes. You know, as the board I think is aware of, we have thresholds at the K through 3, and then for 5, 6, or excuse me, 4, 5, and 6, we have thresholds of 27 that we do not like to go above. So again, if we have open enrolled students, we have them request quite often where a family would like to be at this building. Continuous open enrollments, if possible, we like to keep that continuous relationship with those classmates, but that's not a guarantee. We have sent letters. We make sure that people are aware of that, they know that, and then we assign them where it's most prudent.
And that could change from year to year too, right?
It can, and we make that very clear with the letter that we send all of our open enrolled families too, that this can change on an annual basis as the needs of the district change.
Questions of clarity, maybe when it or clarification, I guess I should say, when it comes to open enrollment. I'm sorry, this unless you want to be placed on the agenda, Stan, this is a meeting of the board. Well, we're glad that you're here. Thank you. So, are there other areas of clarification that we need to talk about that maybe you've been confused about, or that we should answer before we move on to where do we head next?
I just like to, for open enrollment, I think as we move forward,
Yeah.
we may have some of that out at the website. I think it would be very helpful to communicate what we just talked about tonight in some kind of very easily digestible format. Points, whether it's the pros and cons of, you know, of how open enrollment works, because I think there's just some misunderstanding among a lot of people as to how that works. I mean, people don't understand, you know, there's state money tied to it, and that is, I mean, that is a financial benefit to the district, and
It
you know,
is.
if you have students, we do lose a source of income, even though there's, you know, some people think it's a tax implication that's unfair, but there is a financial benefit to having open enrolled students too. So,
And one of the things we might be able to do, and even see if we can do a little video presentation, multiple points, and even see if Eric Heitz is willing to be a part of that from the Department of Education, because he is the department's expert on open enrollment. So
really helpful.
it would be very
I think
helpful,
so
I think.
too.
So,
I think so too.
yeah.
Same might be true of the preschool.
Mhm.
Something together.
I'm going to ask you for clarification then, just for me.
Sure.
So I understand the continuous completely. If we would close open enrollment though, still students that live in the district move out are still by law allowed to come back to the district.
If they apply for open
Even if we
enrollment, there is
just
a decision by the
Okay.
DE.
I just want to
Yep.
make sure I understood that.
And that's a continuous
Okay.
open enrollment, correct?
Okay. And if we would close open enrollments, let's say to the 6 students, or if we had, anybody that lives here now, moves away, and moves back, and applies in a timely manner, can still,
They don't even have to move back.
They don't move back.
well,
no,
excuse
they
me,
just
not move
apply.
back, attend
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
come back
Right.
to school.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And that's called a good cause exception to the open enrollment request. There's a code, and there are really 5, I believe, provisions for good cause exceptions, and one of them is moving out of the district for that continuous enrollment. And the DE has been very clear with the guidance to us that says cannot deny continuous open enrollment if applied for in a timely manner, and that's the great majority of our open enrolled students.
What are the parameters under which we can close open enrollment? I mean, are there parameters, or you can just close it as you see fit?
Board action. You have to specify the reasons why, and that's going to be for either enrollment or capacity challenges. And there are specifications in Iowa code. You can specify that for attendance centers. You can specify that for grade levels. You can specify that for your district if you so choose.
And if the board decided to do that, it would go into effect when? Immediately? next year,
You
when
would-
does that?
You'd have to do, it's probably effective starting next year. The date for the open enrollment application is I think it's March 1st. March 1st or March 31st.
Of 2016.
Of 2016 for the 17-18 school year. The one exception is kindergarten students. They haven't until September 1st of the current year, so we can still have kindergarten students choosing to open enroll into our district by meeting the timeline of September 1st. So the open enrollment deadline is next March to open enroll into the district for the 16-17 school year. What we'll have now from this time frame, excluding kindergartners, from this time frame till March will be those students that are living here, have residency, are attending our school district, will move out November 2nd, November 1st into a home in another community. And again, the board does have discretion to deny those students.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions about open enrollment? So, is there anything else that you feel we need to clarify, at least right now, before we move on with just talking about any further about the facilities?
Sizes.
Okay.
So in the issues we're facing now, at a high level, are we basically at 24 max per classroom for K3 and 27 for 4-6? Or is it all over the map?
Yeah, there's a lot of variance with that.
Okay.
There's some classes that might be at 20, some courses or classes that might be higher than that. We have one section that we had one student at 8 in another building. So a lot of that is, we've tried to keep those neighborhoods intact, so we haven't moved besides some of our open enrollment students around, but there is some variance in that. Our capacities at our buildings that we shared last time through the bond, the last two bonds, was always maximizing every classroom with the maximum amount of students that can go into those classrooms. And that's one of the fallacies that we need to clarify again, that you're never going to be at that max capacity. There's always going to be a variance in class sizes unless the board says we are going to go down our streets and say this house is going to go there, this house is going to go there, that house is going to go there. This house has 5 children living there, so we've got to bus you over here and move you 2 schools, across town. So, and that's something that we have not chosen to do. And again, I'm not sure of any districts that do that.
And with mobility, I don't know how you could do that anyway. But
It ebbs and
things
flows.
change throughout the year, at least being a building for.
You'd hope so.
You'd want.
Yeah.
I realize that was an extreme example. So just a hypothetical what if, and about it with the staff. If board took action and said now K through 3 can be 27 and 4 through 6 can be 30. Again, not optimal, I'm assuming, educationally, but would that buy us a year or 2 or 10 years in relation to capacities?
It's a good question. I've not ran those numbers to find out if class sizes and what is that tipping point where either class sizes are too large, or we think that the class sizes and how many years those class sizes would allow us to maintain the current number of classrooms we have across the district. That would be something I'd have to run numbers on.
Well, as a lot of our discussion, I think, tailors, there's always the give and the take.
There are.
So we could satisfy our facilities by raising every classroom to 30, but then is our viable, or the kids getting those better scores? Is it a more desirable place as it is now by default because of our increased enrollment? And just as the kindergartners, or the pre-K, there's the give and take to that as well to make sure it's viable.
We, again, it always rises to the administration level at this time, but when we have class sizes that are that 27, about it, because there's some angst and some concern, and the quality of education sometimes comes into question, not instruction, but just because the sheer number of students and bodies, and that can be a large challenge. I would imagine that if we went to a threshold of 30 students in our district, we would probably have some unintended consequences that would come from that I'm not sure we could predict, but I would imagine those would come. And I think that would come from parent concern. I think that would come from potential educational quality within the classroom. I could see some concerns arising with just the student safety to and interact with that large of a class. But I'm not sure exactly what all those would be, and I'm not sure we could always predict what all those could be, because I think some of them would certainly be unintended consequences.
And Jim, sometimes we do go over that 21 to 24 students and 24 to 27 are guidelines we use. Occasionally we do go 1 or 2 students over that, not two, but we also have a fiscal responsibility. If we have 6 classes that are over by 2 kids, we can't afford to hire 6 teachers too. So we really have to try to balance it out and do the best we can.
Good point.
And these numbers are what are recommended by.
Recommendation by the DE.
I think it's my understanding that the board had discussed this several years ago, put those guidelines in place. I don't know how long ago, but that was my understanding.
It's been a while. When Mr. Vandekeef was on the board.
And really, those are all over across the state. Some districts have thresholds of 18 students at the lower elementary that they say that they won't go above. And now there's other districts that have higher. But again, those are all decisions locally that districts have to make.
2 things I'm still hearing about. I'm still hearing some of, and I think in talking to people, it's not necessarily strictly about grade alignment. Probably the deeper cause of it is some programming frustrations and things like that. So there's some way that we can tap into that. I don't know if it's worth bringing in some parent focus groups or things like that for people who really are struggling with it. I think there are probably some ways we can solve those concerns without, if we're not wanting to, totally shake up our grade alignment. I think there are probably some programs from what I'm hearing from parents.
Do you mind, Jenny, giving us just an example, just a generic example? Just because I might not hear it.
I think some of the things I've heard from my peers are the experiences are not maybe truly what they're considering high school challenging experiences. They feel their kids are maybe a little too sheltered and not being treated as high schoolers at the so they're not getting the full access of classes that they could take. And so it's some of those kinds of things. I mean, I told Andy I'd kind of talk through it more and get a more specific list together. So I'm just kind of throwing this out in general.
Okay.
But that's what I'm hearing from the people who are very about supporting the plan that we've put forth, because they're really struggling with the grade alignment piece.
Okay.
So it's really for them at that 9th grade level, and somewhat at the 6th grade level, just making sure those kids are getting challenging experiences that are high school experiences, or getting those 6th graders a little more prepared for the junior high.
And I think that's something we to make sure that people understand what is offered and established, so and then we can get that. What are they missing? What do we need to be able to fill in to make charge them?
That's okay. I was sort of second what Jenny is indicating, and maybe not so much for the programming part of it, but I've knocked on a lot of doors the last 2 months, and it's almost backing up a little bit for a problem-solving issue towards our facilities, whereby if there was a brand new high school built, however it needs to be constructed, where the 9th grade is now housed in the same new building, and we move the 6th grade, it's now 6, 7, 8 in the junior high, we hear a giant sucking sound out of the elementary schools, and then that is, again, maybe a different path maybe you were going programming-wise, but as we segue into facilities, if that can be discussed, if the board's interested in hearing those starting from scratch or putting all things on the table. I know last we heard from you, it was all being discussed, or at least next move.
Yeah, and that's the, I think that's something that I've heard as well when people have said, well, let's go with a 9-12 structure, move 6th grade into the junior highs, keep the 6 elementaries and just have those be, pre-K 5. When I've sat down and talked with people about those, it's an option that looks good on paper, but it's expensive. The other processes or the other solutions that we had, just by square footage needs. We know that high school square footage needs basically per student are about 200 and anywhere from 210 to about 215 to 220 square foot per student. When you look at all the elective offerings with all the different co-curricular and extracurricular offerings that are offered at the high school. At the elementary level, obviously you don't have the consumer economics, you don't have the Project Lead the Way labs, you don't have a lot of those spaces there. The average square footage for an elementary per student is about 130 square foot per student, maybe 32 to 135. The difference is anywhere from 70 to 85 square foot per student. So if you add that space to the high school to accommodate those 400 students, 450 students, you take them out of 6th grade, you put it at the high school level. At the elementary level, the cost difference is going to be anywhere from $7 to $9 million difference to add that to high school. I think the challenge that people then forget, they say, well, that's okay, but then they forget that we have to still remodel North Cedar. We still have to add on to North Cedar to be able to provide that square footage with the flex spaces, with the added separate gym and cafeteria spaces to make sure that we have those opportunities when we look at equity for that deeper hands-on experiences for students, the creativity spaces, the maker spaces, and we have to do the same thing at Orchard Hill. Now, it might not be the number of rooms at Orchard Hill that we have to add on because you don't have the number of students, but each classroom that you add on, and Doug would know this number much better than I would, is roughly about $250,000 to add on a classroom space onto a building, and maybe $300,000 roughly. You take off the
150 to 200,000 a room. Yeah.
So
that's a good number.
you take off the 6 classrooms that we're going to add on that were above and beyond the 7 classrooms. Comes out to only about $1.5 to $9 million needed with the extra space at the high school for those students. You deduct off the savings of $2 million you're still going to be much more expensive to do that. And the question is, would our community be willing to support a bond that's going to be more expensive to be able to house the same number of students?
I definitely don't want to cut this conversation off. I want to continue talking. Dave, you sounded like
Well, Andy's got all the cards, and so we're trying to have a discussion about different ways to go here, but it sounds like every time we throw something out, Andy pulls out a card, and that trumps the discussion, and it's over. And so I'm still going to make a run at this. Even though I'll get trumped, I know. But to combine Jenny's comment about programming with Jim's comment about facilities needs, for every 9-12 high school in Iowa, for every 10-12 high school, there's 4 9-12 high schools. So somebody's figured this out, that from a financial standpoint, they made it work. Is it because the 9th grade wing doesn't have the programming of a complete high school, so it's fewer square foot per student? It works, and I really do think that a lot of that's driven by the cost of facilities. And I would much rather be working around with grade alignment. I think we can maintain a quality education than increasing classroom sizes. That one, I think the research has been pretty consistent since you all did the work on that years ago. So it seems like there's something going on there that we're missing.
Well, one hypothesis could also be that it's tradition.
Well, I'm looking at.
I'm not saying you're right or wrong. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's another hypothesis where it isn't like people made the calculations and said we should do 9-12, but they're saying, well,
That's
my
possible.
fathers and my fathers before me My father's
Right.
for them did 9-12.
I think the look where districts are growing
Uh-huh.
and find out what was driving the facility design.
Yes.
Right. We don't want to do it because we always did it that way.
Right.
I agree with
I
that.
think the districts are growing, are 12. We had that information a couple months ago.
And sometimes they have a single class in a building, like in,
Flexibility.
yeah.
Well, or like the ninth grade unit in West Des Moines.
Right.
They have a ninth grade building, I think,
They do.
Ames.
Like Ames has
Not
a standalone
Ames.
ninth grade. West Des Moines has a standalone ninth
Who's
grade.
just building a ninth grade one, though?
Johnston
College community.
College
Okay.
Community has the 10-12 and looking at ninth grade. West Des Moines, Waukee has gone to 8-9 buildings. Looking at a second high school, that's going to be a 10-12 in structure. It's a good question.
And it's all driven by growth. Is what? Well, obviously they're not going to compromise the quality of their education, but these more innovative options seem to be driven by the growth in their communities.
A lot of times, yeah. And some of it is just that uniqueness of that ninth grade year or two. You know, a lot of people have gone towards, like ninth grade academies, ninth grade structures, sometimes ninth grade standalone buildings, as we just discussed, because it is a challenging transitional year in a lot of different ways. And your success in ninth grade really goes a long way to indicate success for graduation and post-secondary success as well. So that's always one of those strong skaters for your ninth grade year. That's always something you just have to know. So no, and again, I don't mean to trump. It's just one of those factors where sometimes those easiest, and I shouldn't say easiest, but sometimes some of them really have been thought on, but we just need to make sure that we're taking that information, and then how do we make sure that it either A, we can be adaptive and flexible, is it programming, is it some other experiences that just aren't coming to light, cost more, will that be successful, and would people support based on realigning grade level if it's going to be more expensive for the structure of the building. I don't want to be a trumper again, but one of the factors, and again, in previous districts were involved with this, our grade alignment was driven by staffing costs. Smaller districts were efficient because you had a teacher that not only taught maybe 7th grade math, they might teach 10th grade math. So we looked at trying to have some more closer facility matches, some sequential matches, so you aren't going to be inefficient with your dollars allocated out of your general fund. So I think a lot of times the grade moving into 12 high school is really based on staffing costs and not trying to duplicate one science teacher or two science teachers. I see that in a lot of smaller districts, and they're making those decisions based on proximity, travel time, and number of staff.
Yeah.
So, as far as that topic, how would you like to proceed? What would you like us to look at? What would you like to do as a board in order to answer all the questions, or so that you feel comfortable as we move forward with whatever grade realignment or structure we're going to use? And yes.
Sub-notes to the current topic, and I'd love to have the board have more discussions if they want to move forward or not. But in relation to that example I gave for the high school change and those sorts of things, from a board member's perspective, we're at least taking a hard look, not that it's right or wrong, but taking a hard look at the 40 to 50 years. Satisfies that. Is the higher dollar amount to get past our public more difficult? Yes, but it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it to try to get that done. And then you made a great point, Dave, because then if we can tackle that over a year or 2 year period of time, Then we're making decisions to maybe peel away a ninth grade or peel away an eighth grade. But we're making those decisions by being educationally innovative, as opposed to the mad rush of making an immediate decision to solve a relatively short-term, not problem, but the motivation for those changes are a lot different if we have that sort of greater realignment established. Just a side note. So
how would you like to proceed as a board? We will walk away from here and come back again on the 20th, because our next board meeting. You can take some time and think about it. Put some thought to what we just talked about. Not that you haven't been thinking about it for the last year, because I know that you have. But it's been very thoughtful conversation tonight, and if there are other questions that we need to answer at the board table, then we would have an opportunity to do that. My struggle personally is how do we answer that grade realignment question? What will satisfy us? Well, I think the focus groups might be a great idea. I do.
And to me, it's
Just on that subject.
right, and it's more about not necessarily satisfying us, but I mean, obviously, from my conversations, that's something that's been holding some people up from really fully supporting things. And so I think it's important we dig down. And is it just about that? What is it really about? And maybe that, I don't know if we've had those conversations, just anecdote, a bunch of my son's peers. I mean, I've been in the building now because Josie's graduated, but this was their first time building, past the beautiful gym and past the beautiful office. And again, the shock that is registering on everyone's minds as they're walking through these hallways, this is when it hits people. So I think for that stakeholder, it's important that we keep this at our, as we're discussing all of our problems, because we don't understand until they walk those halls the challenges that our high school staff and students face every day. I mean, I had one student parent, she's like, oh my gosh, this hasn't changed in 30 years. I'm like, nope, not really.
When Dan made his report on, I guess 3 years ago, so what you did 3 years ago, on grade alignment, I thought that you had already spoken to parents. I remember that being one of the slides was what parents, so haven't
As
we
well
already?
as staff, as much as we did with staff and students at that time.
But parents weren't.
Staff and students were part
But if it is, then I would like to also explore the idea of a 6 through 12 or something a little larger if we're building. Because then you do have the efficiencies that if you want a 7th grader to take 10th grade math, no problem. And there are schools that work. We talked before about and some about a K-12 building. You pretty much talked me out of that idea. I'm not going to call it trumping. I don't usually like to use that word anymore. But you convinced me that K-12 was a bad idea just from the cost of building it. But I'm wondering if the magic number is 9, 10, or could we go down? So if it's on the table, I would like to explore that. If it's not on the table, I'm not going to push for it to be on the table. Does that make sense?
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we were prescriptive about what the levels should be. Let's look at the options.
Not look at the options, but look at the options.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My one statement would be is that if we end up going kind of back to the drawing board, whatever that looks like, some of the unintended consequences are going to be what do we do with the students in the next couple years.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, no matter what, and I'm not saying, the conversation needs to happen and it needs to take place. I don't disagree with that. We also have to be aware that we are having these children coming into the district, and what do we do with them, and where do we put them in order to educate them to the level that we all feel comfortable with. So that as we're going through this, we need to think about that. Because, I'm thinking in my mind, be ready for April date if we do that, which is, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, as long as we're all aware of what the possibilities are. Then here's my other question, is do you think this is something as a board that we can facilitate with our administrator, or with our cabinet, on our own? Do you think we can facilitate this conversation and move forward on our own without help?
As opposed
For
to
the bond, you mean? Or?
No, just this conversation.
when you say without help, I don't know what the alternative is.
Without having
Without like an
outside
external.
facilitator or someone else coming in.
Jenny, how she almost left it there, just in terms of the board being informed of what we're hearing out in public. And Andy, I appreciate the fact that you bring it up and we're able to ask you questions. I also appreciate the fact that you said a few times, you said, I don't know. So to continue this conversation, I mean, if the other board members don't want to go grade realignment for whatever reason, then that could be decided. But otherwise, I think just continuing as we have tonight with more information pertaining to what we've been hearing would be very fruitful.
And I wonder and I'm just again talking out loud, if we could do maybe an electronic survey of some sort to see where our parents fell in that. And I'm looking at Dan as he looks at me because I can't look at Andy right now. But I mean, it was some way to because if we have a focus group, we'll get some attendance. It may not be great attendance because we've seen how that happens. Even if we offer them many times at many different buildings, I'm sure that we're getting the.
I think that's a great idea.
So maybe we can look at something like that and then bring it back.
Yep. No, and I think it would be something we'd want to target probably parents that just went through that experience, either ninth grade that now have sophomores, sixth grade parents that now are. And we can ask a targeted set of questions.
Are you talking more down the road, or August 24th?
No, down.
Okay.
Whenever,
Okay.
yeah, whenever. Because I don't think we have to do something in order to. We can keep talking like this, but I still think, it is who we talk to. And I think depending on where we are at the time and when we ask the question, we get a different answer. At least I do, especially if I ask it in the dental office. I can get, because I see all different ages, so get a wide range of answers. But I think this is a good conversation, and we can be here for a long time tonight. I think this is step one.
I agree.
Can I make a comment to your first question?
Yes.
I was trying to follow the SAVE conversation from earlier. And if I read the numbers right, an expansion at Orchard Hill would get us 5 years of growth, roughly. Are we can't expand Orchard? Can we go ahead and expand Orchard? Are we absolutely sure that we're tapped out and can't? Yeah. I don't ever know where the money's hidden, so I can't answer that myself.
That hurt. By the way, that
Not much
hurt.
hidden, I don't think.
Well, I see 7.7 million here as a starting point, but I'm not versed enough to be able to pull out numbers at this level to say, well, that'll cover it.
But you have to remember that
Expansion.
Two of those are set aside.
set aside
Right.
dollars.
Right, and so what's the minimum can that account be? We ended it last year at 8.4 million. Right?
Yeah,
And I didn't mean to resolve that right here and right now, but I've been challenged by the public. Are you sure you can't afford to go ahead and expand Orchard? Are you really sure?
I don't know if we'd have the capacity to do everything at Orchard. My opinion right now, I'd have to go back and
Mhm.
look at every number. And again, I couldn't even tell you, I think Orchard was like $10 million, and if we tap everything out and have, and if we say we're not going to, if a roof goes to a catastrophic level and we have something that goes wrong and we have a wall that needs tuck pointing and is deteriorating, we're not going to be able to do that work. That would be the question. If we always, again, that's reserve. Make sure we have some set aside money to handle those emergencies when they come up. Do we want to put ourselves in a position where for 8 years we cannot do in our district if something goes bad?
Well, and again, I don't know the numbers, and I don't know if you and I would agree on that. I did spend 20 years working in facilities, so I have some experience with reserves and roof repairs and so on. So maybe my experience is a little different than yours, but Joyce's point is a great one. We've got to do something about the growth, because if we don't, it's going to take care of itself, and people will stop coming to Cedar Falls if we don't do something.
That's exactly right. It's a sustainability component right now, and we have to continue to provide great facilities, great education to be able to continue with the economic development component within our community. We have to do something. And I think, making sure that we have the right discussions to move forward is extremely important. But the other side of that coin is timeliness, and we just can't talk. We have to come to a resolution so we can have a plan. Mind is going to be very, very important process.
Good point.
Well, I have a question too. Isn't the 10 million for Orchard Hill only to more or less get rid of the portables? And it's 3-section. It's not a 4-section building.
It basically is. Yeah, it increases the capacity, but it really just replaces the. So we have the 6 classrooms and the portables. It's right now a 2-section building. The intent would be to bring it to a 3-section building. It removes the portables, brings up the rest of the building to the standard that 4 of our 6 elementaries are at right now, and then allows us to at least have the equity in services and that ability to really have those, what's next in the educational focus, hands-on learning experiences.
Well, I'm sharing what I'm hearing from the community, and these are not totally uninformed people either, and so maybe there's a compromise there where we can do some expansion, and I'm not saying do it in a fashion that doesn't provide quality education, but are we sure we've looked at all the options? Are we sure? And that's public challenges me with that.
Right.
And that's just talking about the initial expansion that we would have done. It's not the full expansion that we could do.
Could do. If you bring it to the same size as Southdale or Hanson, which would be that 625 range, it's kind of a 3/4 section building. That was built in long-term as needed at Orchard Hill. Right away, we'd add capacity of about 125 students.
So why don't, for right now, let's, if it's okay, if we move on from this discussion and maybe either set a work session or see what the agenda is, what it's going to involve at our next meeting on the 24th. And then we'll just see what works with everyone's schedule and proceed with that. Is that seem reasonable to everyone?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
And then just because of, I don't know if it's logistically or legally possible, but if the work session, could we do it something next week, or is that too soon?
That would be a challenge for us, just with the new staff coming back, all staff coming back.
Got it. All right.
Oh yeah, school starts.
Right. So I was hoping to get it in before school starts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would prefer, if it's okay with the board, to have a discussion on the 24th and go from there.
Okay. What's that decide time for?
Light, again, is that
We'll
possible?
take a look at it and see what's on
This is a
it.
good conversation.
So, okay. Thank you. Thank you for answering questions. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for clarifying open enrollment and some of those other things that we needed clarification on, because I felt like that was important tonight.
Jenny, you said two things, and one was grade alignment. What was the other?
The other is just, as we've got new high school with students who haven't been there before, just making sure that they understand patient. Even though the focus, as of late has been more on the elementaries. I just think we need to assure them we understand.
Gotcha.
It's still in our mindset.
Thank you. I wrote a number 2 down, and I haven't filled it in yet, so.
Feel free, whatever.
Fill the blank.
Moving on then, the approval of the superintendent's contract. And I'm gonna just move this over to someone. Done. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's contract?
I move that the Board of Education of the Cedar Falls Community School District issue a 3-year contract to Andrew R. Petit as Superintendent of Schools with a salary of $192,000 for the first year of the contract, $3,500 in district car, and standard district administrative benefit package.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item J on the agenda, superintendent's report.
Just a couple different items. The all-school welcome, which all board members are invited to, is Friday, August 21st. That is different than in past years due to the fact that the Chamberlain Alliance Cedar Valley all new teacher welcome is on that Thursday morning. So this is Friday, August 21st at 8:15 a.m. and then take place at 7 p.m. here.
Questions, comments, or concerns from the board? You all received electronically a Survey Monkey to fill out. In the instructions, I asked you to fill it out by the end of the week. I know this is Monday. I've had one complete theirs, so thank you, whoever that was.
Whoever that was probably a number.
Yes, I'm sure. And the reason I would like to do that is because I want to use that. It's just a self-assessment for the board. It's for us to take a look at what we're doing and what we are as a board member. And so please take the time. There's only 6 questions, so it shouldn't take a long time. But then you have an opportunity to comment. And that sometimes the comment is valuable question there. So I appreciate your time in advance for taking the time to do that. So, any other questions or comments or concerns? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, guys.